Welcome students to class 9 civics. Your textbook is titled Democratic Politics and is in two parts. The first part in class 9, that is Democratic Politics part 1, and Democratic Politics part 2 in class 10. Since chapter number 1 of your civics textbook is not in syllabus, we will start with chapter 2 of civics, that is what is democracy and why we need democracy. This particular chapter deals with the need for democracy and what is the correct meaning and definition for democracy. This particular presentation will tell us the difference between a democratic and a non-democratic government. It will help us build a definition of democracy depending upon the features of a democracy. To begin with, we need to understand how a democratic government is different from a non-democratic government. A democratic government is a popular government. That means it is chosen by the people and is formed by the representatives of the people. These representatives are elected at a regular interval through a free and fair elections. It is these elected representatives who take the major decisions on behalf of the people. The people who elect the representatives have equal voting rights and they vote for electing the representatives at a regular interval. On the other hand, a non-democratic government is a government which has been imposed upon the people. It is not a popular choice of the people. The decisions are taken either by a monarch or a dictator. These monarchs and dictators hold their position by force. They may not be the popular choice of the people. Such governments where the rulers are not chosen by the people, such governments which are not popular governments, are the non-democratic government. Then what is democracy? To understand the meaning of democracy, we need to understand some of its features. Your textbook, in a very interesting manner, has explained these features of democracy through certain stories. To understand the first feature of the democracy, we will see the story from Pakistan. Pakistan, a neighboring country. In October 1999, the elected government in Pakistan was overthrown by a military dictator, that was General Pervez Musharraf. After overthrowing the democratically elected government, he declared himself the chief executive, later held a referendum and granted himself a 5-year extension. During that period, he amended the constitution of Pakistan and issued a legal framework order. According to this legal framework order, the work of the elected cabinet was supervised by the National Security Council, dominated by the military officials. So, in Pakistan, under Pervez Musharraf, elections were held, representatives were elected, but the final power to take decisions was in the hands of military officers and General Pervez Musharraf himself. So just by electing a government, the country cannot be called democratic, because the decisions which are taken on behalf of the people should be by the elected leaders, not by the leaders who have imposed themselves upon the country. These elected representatives should be the real rulers. They should have the power to take all the major decisions. So Pakistan under Musharraf cannot be called a democracy. Now we come to the second feature of a democratic government, which says that a democracy must have free and fair electoral competition. Electoral competition means elections. Here your textbook talks about two examples, one from China and the other from Mexico. In China, there are elections which are held regularly after every 5 years. But interestingly, every time the elections are won by members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 small parties that are allied to it. Only these parties can contest elections. Only those who are members of Chinese Communist parties are allowed to contest elections and hold power. Therefore, we can say that in China, elections are being held, but these elections are neither fair nor are they free. A similar example comes from Mexico. In Mexico, till the year 2000, all elections were won by a political party by the name of PRI. PRI wins elections, but it is known for using dirty tricks to win these elections. This political party forces people to vote for them. Teachers are forced to tell the parents of their students to vote for the PRI. All those who work in the government offices have to attend the party meetings. Even the media is under the control of PRI. It reports only about the PRI and ignores the activities of other political parties. The PRI is known to spend huge amount of money in buying of votes. Therefore, we can say that even in Mexico, it cannot be called a democracy because the elections are neither free nor they are fair. That brings us to the third feature of the democracy, which says one person, one vote and one value. Here your textbook talks about 3 examples. One from Saudi Arabia, where the women did not have voting rights. Only the men could vote. Yes, we cannot call it democracy because the government is formed by voting, but that voting does not include the vote of women. In Estonia, people who are in minority, who are usually Russians, they do not get equal voting rights. So governments are formed, but those governments do not have approval of the Russian minority. In Fiji, the vote of an indigenous Fijian, that means a person belonging to Fiji, the vote of such a person is more than that of Indian Fijian. That means a Fiji whose ancestors had gone from India. Therefore, even in Fiji, we cannot call the government a democratic government because people have got voting rights, but each vote does not have equal value. We move on now to the fourth feature of democracy, which says that in a democracy, there should be rule of law and respect for rights. Rule of law means that it should be the law which is ruling, not the person. No, it should not be a monarch which is ruling. It should not be a dictator which should be ruling. It should be the law which is ruling. A very interesting example comes from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe attained independence in 1980. Since then, the country has been ruled by a political party by the name of ZANU-PF. The elections are held regularly and are always won by this political party. Interestingly, the party which came to power through the popular approval of the people, over the years it changed the constitution several times to increase the powers of the president. That was Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe has been ruling the country since independence. Opposition party workers in Zimbabwe are harassed, they are imprisoned, public protests and demonstrations against the government are not entertained, they are declared illegal. Therefore, we can say that though Robert Mugabe was popular, but he does not respect law, neither he has respect for people's rights. He ignored the laws and changed the constitution to increase his powers. He does not respect the rights of people to protest against the wrong policies of the government. The media is also controlled by the government. Therefore, we cannot say that Zimbabwe has a democratic government. That brings us to the major features of a democracy, where the first one, which we learned from example of Pakistan, was that rulers elected by the people should take all major decisions. The second example which we learned from the second feature which we learned from the example of China and Mexico is that elections should offer a choice and fair opportunity to the people to change the current rulers. This opportunity should be available to all the people on regular basis. That is the third feature which we learned from the example of Estonia and Fiji, that each person should have one vote and each vote should have equal value. The last or the fourth feature of democracy which we learned from the example of Zimbabwe was that the exercise of this choice should be limited by basic rules given in the constitution and the citizens' rights. Based on these features, we can easily construct a definition of democracy. That is, democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. That also brings us to an end of this presentation, which talked about what is democracy. The next presentation from the chapter will deal about why do we need democracy.